Hey there, it's Risto. I wanted to do a quick knife review, but before we start, I just wanted to let you know that some of you know this, maybe you don't, probably most of you don't. I did a couple of reviews about 3 years ago on a flashlight or two, and I dropped it off, and now I decided I want to start doing some reviews, and my goal is to start doing one a week. So this is my sort of reboot of my channel. So here we go. So the knife I'm going to be reviewing is the Spyderco Resilience. Probably a lot of you are familiar with this. The Spyderco Resilience, the Tenacious, all those knives have been reviewed a lot on YouTube, and I've seen a lot of the reviews. I just wanted to, add my 2 cents to this. I've had this knife for probably 2 years. Again, a lot of this stuff I'll be reviewing, it's probably been reviewed and stuff I've had for a couple of years or several months at least, until I start, picking up the channel and getting new knives that, are brand new to me and I can start reviewing. But for now, we're going to review this that's, I've had for a few years. So let's go over the specs of the knife first. So the overall length is 9.375 inches, and the closed length is 5¼ inches. The blade thickness on this is 0.125 inches. So it's, pretty thin. I personally like thin, full flat ground folders. It's, I'm letting you guys know this. It does, better slicing and cutting tasks for EDC. And let's see here. So the blade length is 4¼ inches. And the nice thing about this particular knife is that the edge runs all the way through on the knife. So there's no, it doesn't stop here or anything like that. It's like some knives do. I like that about this knife. We'll get into that later. The blade steel on this is 8CR 13 MOV. This is, well-known steel. It's a Chinese steel. For me, I think it's, it's a decent steel, and I'll get into that again a little bit later. The handle is a G10, and the weight is 5.4 ounces. Now, as far as the steel, let's just talk about that now. I find this steel, I like it for some reasons, and I don't like it for other. For me, I'm sort of limited as far as my sharpening goes. I don't have any fancy sharpening systems other than the Spyderco triangle sharpener, which I find works for me, and everything I'm doing is on a budget, so I don't have money to get, Edgewise Apex, even though that's not that expensive. That's something I'd like to get, something like that, a consistent angle sharpener down the road. But for now, I'm sort of limited to the Spyderco Sharpmaker. And what I find is with this steel, yes, it'll dull quickly, but at the same time, I can get it relatively sharp, quickly. Now, this is not the original factory edge. I got this professionally sharpened a couple of years ago, and I've just sort of been maintaining it with my Spyderco Sharpmaker, and it seems to be doing well. And again, later down the road, I'd like to go over my system with the Sharpmaker and what I do to maintain my knives. So yeah, another comment here is that the clip is 4-way positionable. Right now I have it on tip-up right side carry, which is my standard. I typically carry my knives in my back pocket or in my front pocket, depending on what I have. But this gives you a lot of options, so you can carry it here. You can carry it anywhere you like, whatever's comfortable for you. So some of the things I like about it, and just some other comments, is this is a liner lock, and it is open pin construction, and you can see it's been skeletonized, which I like. I mean, it is a long blade. You're talking about 4¼ inches, and with the weight of 5.4. So they're doing what they can to save weight on this, but not much you can do with that long of a blade. As far as how it rides in the pocket, let me just get back to the pocket clip. When I first got this knife, the pocket clip was extremely, extremely stiff. Like, literally, it would yank on my pants or my shorts or whatever until there was nothing left that it could grab onto. And I mean, fortunately the G10's not super rough or anything, so it didn't rough up my pants. It was just sort of a pain to put it in and out because it was so tight. It's still very, very tight. But what I've done is I shoved cardboard under the clip and left it like that for, you know, several weeks. You know, every time I put this back, you know, I'd switch out a knife, I'd just stick cardboard under here to try and loosen it. And over time it finally did loosen. I mean, I emailed Spyderco about it, seeing if I could get a new clip, and they just told me to, you know, see if I can bend it back, and I was like, okay, whatever. So now, you know, it works a lot better, but before, when I first got it, it was really, really tight. You know, it was a pain. Anyway, the price on these knives is, you know, about $50, $47.97 on Amazon and also BladeHQ.com. Those are the two sites I use most. So let's sort of go into what I use this knife for. This, for me, I know a lot of people think, you know, like just as an example, Nothing Fancy, he likes to go into tactical knives and EDC knives. I sort of do both, you know. I always have a knife on me, and I don't really look at it as one knife is, you know, is tactical, one knife is EDC. I just use it for, you know, whatever. I don't care. Typically, when I first started carrying knives, I would carry 2 knives or even 3, and they would often be this size. I used to really enjoy carrying very large knives about this size, or, you know, maybe a little bit smaller. I'd have one in my front pocket, one in my back pocket. But nowadays, I sort of just carry one. I'm sort of limited to that because, just to tell a short story, I was carrying the ZT-0571 in my front pocket and a different knife in my back pocket, and my phone got all scratched up, and I was like, oh, I can't do that anymore. So nowadays I just sort of carry back pocket, and then I have my phone in my front pocket. Anyway, we'll go over that later. But some of the things I like about this, again, the steel, you know, it's a downside in some cases in that, you know, it'll dull pretty quickly, but at the same time I can get it really, really sharp without much effort. And I find that, you know, using, I don't have a strop or anything, but using the Spyderco Sharpmaker, I purchased the ultrafine rods, and with that I can just keep it sharp without having to do a resharpening every time. A couple of things I like about this knife is the speed. It's very, very quick, and I find with this example, the tightness as far as the pivot is like perfect. So the speed is great. You know, you could do the middle finger. Well, it was not very good. And at the same time, the lockup is just about perfect. You can see it is a liner lock. You know, typical liner lock. One thing you sort of have to be aware with this knife is because the edge runs all the way to the end. Sorry, let me get that in frame. There we go. You sort of can't close it one-handed. At least I don't find. I like to sort of just close it two-handed like that. Because, you know, you don't want to just drop it and then have the knife cut you or something like that. I've never been cut by this knife, but I just, you know, like to be aware of that, because if you just slam it down, you could end up cutting yourself. You know, some knives, they have a larger choil, or as an example, like the Spyderco Paramilitary, you could, I mean, that's a little bit different, but anyway. So let's go on to what I like about it. I mean, I already covered it. I like the blade length. I tend to like longer blades, and you just can do more with them, you know. Let me get the fingerprints off. You can just do a lot more with them. Again, you just have to take weight into consideration. For me, if I'm wearing really light shorts, this might be too heavy because it's weighing down my pocket. But, you know, my work pants, this is fine. You know, I wear Carhartt work pants, and this is great. You know, another thing I like about it is just the ease of sharpening. Again, also, I mentioned this earlier, the price. The price works for me because, you know, if this gets damaged or lost, it's not a big deal. You know, I have $200-300 knives that if I lost or they got broken somehow, you know, it would be a problem. But this, not so much. And And the dislikes, I gotta say the pocket clip for me was a real problem because it stopped me from carrying the knife for a long time. And, you know, you shouldn't want to not carry a brand new knife. And, you know, but I've worked that out. I guess one other thing I'd like to go over here is the sharpness. Now again, like I said, I had this professionally sharpened, but this is a while ago, and I've just been maintaining it with my Spyderco Sharpmaker. So here's a piece of paper. Let's see how I do. Pretty sharp. Yep, hung up. So, you know, could be touched up a little more, but I'm quite happy with it. So overall, I would definitely recommend the knife to anyone who's interested. It's, you know, again, you might want to check with your local laws with a 4 1/4 inch blade. I don't know, but for me, it's fine, and I don't even care. And definitely would recommend it if you like longer, heavier knives. And yes, it's Chinese, and you know, there's going to be some downsides, but the price, you can't ignore the price, and the quality is definitely there. It's just, you know, it's not the same as like an American produced knife, but it's definitely worth it for the price. And you know, yeah, the G10 isn't as nice as like on the military or the paramilitary, but still, I like it quite a bit. And yeah, sometimes, I mean, in the past I would carry this in conjunction with a Benchmade and have 2 large knives. Nowadays I usually just carry 1 large knife and a small multi-tool or like a Victorinox. But yeah, tell me what you think about the knife. Anyone with the experience, I'd like to know personally if anyone else had similar problems with the pocket clip. A couple of people I know had no problems, but you know, mine, like I said, it was very, very tough. Like before, without doing the cardboard trick, I would never be able to lift this off. Before, it would be just so tight. And you know, I took it off and I unscrewed it before, and I tried to bend it out, and it wasn't really working. Again, what worked for me is just sticking cardboard under here and leaving it there for very long periods of time. Anyway, hope you guys liked the review, and I hope you have a nice day. Thank you. Bye.